So friends, good morning. On
Morning.
behalf of Higher Education Forum, we extend you a hearty welcome to this exciting discussion, a panel discussion on Union Budget 21-22, which came out very recently on 1st of February. Union Budget is more of a policy announcement. Actual things happen on the ground. Nevertheless, many of us look at Union Budget with a sense of excitement. That's what's likely to happen in the country in the economic and the financial term next 1 year or so. It gives a perspective. That's what likely in store and what the government of India thinking is on the various issues, aspects, problems, mitigation strategies, financial outlays, and so on and so forth. Now, to a large extent, success of Union Budget depends upon, Union Budget only gives a direction. Success of a Union Budget depends upon its implementation. So that's another key in the area of, so we talk about objective, we talk about a policy statement, we talk about the various issues and the aspects in respect of which the financial outlays are going to be made. But the most important aspect is actually implementation. Now, this was a very unique budget in the sense that this budget came post-pandemic, rather during the pandemic, and therefore many people called it actually Finance Minister himself called it a one in a century budget, 100 years budget. And she also gave a very statement that I spent, meaning thereby that whatever the government of India could spend, they have actually spent. And they also are thinking of spending. So that's the background under which we are into this particular discussion today. And we have lined up a very, very eminent panel. We have got primarily, it is an open discussion where people will share their views. But before that, we thought that we would have three presentations to lead presentations. They will only give a idea as to what is given in this particular what you call Union Budget. So we have with us initially a good friend of ours, a member of Higher Education Forum itself, Mr. R. Kannan. Mr. R. Kannan does not require introduction, but for those of you who do not know him, he's an economist, a student of economics, a lover of economics, a practitioner. And his last assignment was he was the head of corporate performance management department of the big group, Hinduja Group. And he has been a very consistent speaker in the various forums on various aspects of economy and the finance. So I would request Mr. R. Kannan to give an overview of this particular budget from a general management and from an economics perspective. Mr. Kannan, please.
Yeah. Good morning to all of you. I would like to thank my mentor, Professor Sengupta sir. He was always guiding me in all my initiatives ever since I came to Mumbai. My relationship with him goes back to when he was a director of SPJ. And I know I have lots of friends here, those with whom I worked, as well as like Ms. Salim Chandani always wants me to be there in all these webinars. So I would like to thank all of you to give me this opportunity to speak to you. This budget, as we are all aware, this has come at a time when this pandemic struck the entire world very deeply. And the question was about lives and livelihoods. As Madam Sitaraman mentioned, last year they had to take a lot of they had to incur a lot of extraordinary expenditure for health, as well as this pandemic related activities. And as you're all aware, even before this budget, this pandemic struck Indian economy, there was a decision which was made. Actually, there was an article in Indian Express yesterday by Mr. Gurumurthy. This is the point I was also emphasizing in my earlier webinars. But this time I was very happy that someone has written it as a big article in Indian Express. He has alluded to the reasons why Indian economy started, the growth started declining in the previous 2 years. And one of the main reasons he has attributed was that, as you're all aware, and after 2008 crisis, most of the countries in the world, especially in Europe and US, the central banks there, they gave some concessions to banks in terms of how to report their NPAs. So they were liberal. So they need not show all the NPAs as NPAs in a normal circumstance. So that is how they gained strength from 2008 onwards. If you see, before the pandemic struck, the banks in Europe and US, they strengthened. Whereas in India, we said that by 2017, all the banks, they have to declare all their NPAs. So of course, they gave a 1 or 2 year period. So the March 2017 was given as a deadline for declaring all the NPAs. That's how our NPAs, which are at 4%, went up to 14-15%. Then, of course, when this has happened, we know that many of the bank balance sheets became very weak and their credit rating has gone down. And bankers, they became very, very conservative in lending money. So that was the start of declining of our economic growth. And even before this pandemic, our government, 2018 itself, they came up with 3 or 4 stimulus measures. What we saw was there was a big fall in demand for many of the products and services in India from 2017 onwards. Then we started seeing quarter on quarter decline in economic growth in India. So you must be remembering, Honorable Finance Minister, she announced even before pandemic struck 3 or 4 stimulus measures. Somehow, whatever measures they undertook, they were not stimulating the demand. On top of that, we saw this pandemic coming, which really struck the economy and economic growth in a big way. Of course, the latest IMF estimate, if you see the economic growth projections by IMF, last year, that is in 2020, the IMF world saw a decline in growth of 3.5%. And this year, they are projecting economic growth of 5.5% for the entire world economy. In fact, they also upgraded the forecast. What happened when it started in after March, we saw every month the people are downgrading the economic forecast. But from October onwards, we saw actually the agencies across the world, even in India, they started upgrading the forecast. Now, instead of downgrading, they started upgrading. So now the latest projection is that this year, the world economy will grow by 5.5%. And IMF says by March 2021, our Indian economy would have, the growth actually would have seen a decline of minus 8%. But their projection for FY22, they say India will be the fastest growing major economy in the world with 11.5% growth. That is the projection by IMF. And if you come to Indian economy, what has happened? Private consumption. We have 3 parts of the economy. Look at it. One is private consumption, second is investment, and third is government expenditure. So if you see private consumption, actually this year, for the entire year, private consumption is likely to decline by 9.5%, but it declined by more than 18% in the first half. So second half is making up of some of that. So the fall will be 9.5%. If you see investment, I think there is a decline of 14.5%, but in the budget, as per the budget projections, they want to increase the capital expenditure. So 26.5% increase will be there. And government expenditure, actually government has spent a lot of money. And according to the latest budget, they are planning to reduce expenditure, mainly on some of that related to pandemic related expenses. To give a perspective, tax revenue in 2020 was 13.56 lakh crores. And this year, it is down marginally by only 0.12 lakh crores. Not a big fall. because government was able to collect a lot of money through excise duty on petroleum and petroleum products. But next year, the government is projecting a very big increase in tax revenue from 13.44 lakh crores to 17.88 lakh crores, an increase of 4.44 lakh crores. So that is a very big jump they're expecting. Non-tax revenue was down by 1 lakh crores this year to 2.1, but next year they expect only 2.43 lakh. So total receipts of the government, actually this year, it increased by 8 lakh crores compared to last year, 34.5. But next year, it will be a marginal increase, 34.83 lakh crores. So if you see, interest expense is one of the major items in our expenditure. It was 6.12 lakh crores last year, 6.92 this year. Next year, we are likely to spend 8 lakh crores. So, and coming to the budget, actually, budget, they are planning to stimulate the demand. The major issue in our economy is that demand not there in many segments even today. So one of the challenges for the government is to stimulate the economy. So the budget which has been submitted, it has a lot of measures for stimulating the demand for in many sectors. But like Professor Sengupta said, now they have all these schemes. My opinion is that, like in a corporate sector, what happens is that once you create a plan, then you create a detailed implementation roadmap. So for all the schemes they announced, they have now infrastructure pipeline, they have demonetization pipeline, they have privatization. So government has to lay down the very detailed implementation plan with a time target and with time and physical targets for each of these schemes. And maybe an agency like Niti Aayog can be given the task of monitoring the implementation of the schemes and closely monitoring and take suggest course corrective action at regular intervals to government to see that how they can be effectively implemented. And some of the areas where they are reducing the expenses this year include fertilizer subsidy will be reduced from 1.33 lakhs to 79,500 crores. Food subsidy, this year 80 crore people in India are getting free food through ration system. So that amounted to 4.22 lakh crores last year. So in the coming year, they are planning to reduce it by 1.8 lakh crores to 2.42 lakh crores. Then pension, I don't know how they are planning to reduce the pension. Pension last year was 2.04 lakh crores. This year, it is going to be 1.89 lakh crores. I don't know how they'll reduce. Actually, pensioners will increase. Pension should go up, but they are assuming that there is a reduction in pension. I don't know what is the assumption behind it. Then rural development expense also from 1.97 lakhs to 1.31 lakhs. Then they are going to the Pradhan Mantri Awas, some scheme is there, 45,000 close to 27,500. So some 2-3 schemes which are in implementation during this pandemic, they are planning to abolish. So in several places, they have budgeted less expenditure. And at the same time, they have budgeted more tax revenues. And one good thing is this Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is going to give a stimulation for 13 sectors, that is likely to attract a lot of foreign investments into India. Basically, the production centers in places like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and China could shift to India, or the people who are planning there, they can come here. And these are my initial views, and I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kannan. I think that gave a broad idea of the intentions of the government in terms of revenues and expenses. We'll come back to later on in the question answer session. In the budget, one of the important sector.
The question answer
Corporate
would have
sector is,
you can ask him a question.
we are looking from a supply angle or whether we are looking from a demand angle. Whether we are looking at a supply angle or we are looking at a demand angle, I think the corporate sector is one of the sector that plays a very, very important role. And if the country is to move ahead, the country is to, I mean to say, the progress, definitely the industrial sector has got a very, very important. To talk on the impact of this particular budget on the industrial sector, we have with us once again a very close friend of ours, Higher Education Forum, Mr. Jayant Khadilkar. Mr. Jayant Khadilkar is an exchequered person. He's a very strong practical person. You know, I know him for last about 10 years, a decade or so, and he is a very, very strong industrial person, a very vocal person at the same time, but at the same time down to the earth person. Now he is a managing director of a company which is called Joy Elastomers Private Limited. It is located in the New Bombay, MAPE. This is in existence for about 30 years, roughly, let us say for a period of 3 decades, started in 1993. It is one of the leading the cast polyurethane and the rubber products manufacturer and export-oriented companies. And there were a lot of clients in the steel plant, in the painting, the varnishing industry, the material handling equipment, in the waste management, and so on and so forth. And they work very closely. One of the most important thing is they work very closely with the Japanese technology and the Japanese collaborator. Mr. Jayant Khadilkar, the floor is open to you for the impact of the budget on the industrial and the corporate sector.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Sengupta, for inviting me over here and to give opportunity to express some of the views on behalf of industry. Good morning, friends. Here I will explain the budget from the industry point of view. I mean, what I personally feel so. Normally, there are always fears about the budget. The budget is from the common man's point of view. It is what is already what you have. The budget will make it.
Sir, you are mute.
Oh, am I audible?
Yeah. Now you're audible.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, friends. Thanks, Dr. Sengupta, again for inviting me over this forum. And this is the perspective from the industry point of view. Well, let me begin with the common man's perception about the budget. See, whatever already you have and you have bought will become cheaper. Whatever you have planned to buy in future, that is going to be costlier. And whatever you have balance in the bank, that interest is going to fall. So this is the common perception all the time for the budget. And they keep on expecting something good mileage out of budget from their own point of view. Now from the industry for this particular budget, I would say it is a spending spree budget with disinvestment kind of a planning. So this time the madam has opened her batwa to spend more in spite of having the gap between the spending and whatever the norms we have accepted for the budget, that 3.2 or 3.5% of the deficit is normally controlled. Now this time we are expecting the deficit would go right up to 9.5. And it's a welcome move from the industry point of view. Definitely, the gap will be bridged by again the disinvestment from the good companies like LIC and all that. Hopefully, government will start implementing the schemes, and then the disinvestment will happen. So before the new budget, some will get moved, and that 9.5 fear will automatically will reduce. That's what the industry feels and welcomes for that. Actually, there is no focus in general for a particular sector, except obviously for the healthcare, and that was expected because the healthcare, education, these are the two areas are neglected in so many budgets for years together. By virtue of pandemic, naturally the healthcare got a boost. Of course, if you see the allocation, again, that allocation, much of the funding is reserved only for the vaccine kind of a bought out percentage of money will be
साउथ के लगे हैं
vaccine rather than the upgradation of the
रूम पे चालू कर
overall healthcare system. But nevertheless, something has began. The next investment and the proposition is good for the MSME. It is almost like a double budget they have proposed for the MSMEs.
हेलो
Let us hope that MSME being the backbone or the growth engine, it is called always, and it increases, generates more of employment in the country. So naturally, this MSME is likely to get boost, and it has been seen in the budget. Also, there's some kind of incentive has been given for the startups. For a lot of discussion has been happening since last 2-3 budgets for the startups. Though the initial idea of giving some good money to young entrepreneurs and they can start the business without having kind of a fear, and money was also quite lump sum, about 35 lakhs rupees, and to be done in 3 years or so. Still, that review of the earlier spending has not been published. But new scheme has been announced like that one company, one man, one company can be also done, and that too the things are open for the overseas our entrepreneurs as well. So that is a good move. So these are 3 things about the budget. That is a healthcare, MSME, and startup are rather welcome from the industry point of view, where the new ideas and new funding will come, and there will be some boost to economical growth. The other features from the industry point of view, that is a faceless transactions. That is a new term which has been introduced and talked about nowadays, which was very important, rather than having and appointing every industry person to make a provision of a licensed man to go and meet proper persons in the government. So that was a kind of a burden and a liability for an industry, and it was a much more time consuming. So this faceless transaction, even for registration, inquiries, online trading, tendering, then the reverse auction, and which will rather cut kind of appeasement policy, which rather was a part of our activity for a particular number of years. So this faceless transaction will bring more transparency in the business. That's what industry people are having a feeling. Then the compliance with the loan documents, which is with ROC and financial institutions, and they can be seen on the portal. So that will be a very good move, because most of the times we hear the problem or the scam or other thing happen only after some big thing comes up in the inquiry or in the media, and then who has passed the loan, who has sanctioned the guarantee, and all that post-mortem happens. So this kind of a compliance, legal compliance, and minimum requirement for the financial institution, and will be seen on the portals. So that will be a welcome move, I would say. Then infrastructure push was expected, and it has happened, and large amount of sum has been allocated for the road infrastructure and then the rail freight corridor. So this will enhance that other part of the economy, that is employment, and most of the material which is generated in the country, like steel and cement, will be consumed. So there will be a direct consumption. Then there will be a good amount of spending on the all Manarega and Rozgar Hami Yojana and all other. So there will be good amount of employment. So in a way, not direct industry, but indirect industry is going to get benefited because of this kind of move of infrastructure push. Basically, this highways, as we come to know from various medias, and they have listed out number of projects have been under completion, and number of projects have been planned for the next few years. and everybody has seen for last few months that whatever the roads and the infrastructure has been built in the northeast and particularly in Ladakh has given us the great advantage of communication as well as reaching out to the remote areas. So that's a big way that we have planned and executed that well. Then there is a boost indirectly again for the auto industry because of the scrap policy. The scrap policy of public vehicles and private vehicles, 15 years and 20 years kind of thing is a really welcome move, because the efficiency wise also and the pollution from point of view also the activity has to be always integrated, and it is to be developed further, that all number of these norms for the pollution are coming every alternate year. So the old vehicle becomes redundant probably in 4 or 5 years nowadays. And the models also, auto companies are coming out with the new ideas. So there is a welcome move. Then there is another big advantage is that the electrical EVs. So those vehicles are being planned by almost all the countries, rather European countries. They have made a phase out plan for the diesel and petrol based vehicles. So in India also, with some kind of incentive expectations, this EV will get a boost, and the economy will move in a proper direction with the less in the pollution content. Well, then there is a duty reforms also are have been mentioned. That is that reverted duty structure, and because of that reverted duty structure, there is some kind of a gap is always there. But what industry expects is like that the products which are definitely produced in India of the international repute or in that particular quality are to be first of all listed, and those products are to be put on more duty kind of thing, so that Indian local manufacturers will get an advantage, and the duty on the local components should be reduced. So that kind of a trade balance one has to have, especially with the reverted duty structure. And much is to be seen, because in reality the analysis of the budget, it is just 6 days ago, but especially with this reverted duty is not yet complete from our side also. And so it is yet to be known that what is the exact meaning of that reverted duty structure. Then natural thrust of a few industries which is likely to happen in this particular financial year is of course the drugs and pharmaceuticals, because India is going to soon become a global hub for the medicinal development as well as the transactional kind of thing, or production wise also will be having the cost competitiveness our industry has already gained, and we will be the soon exporters for the quality medicines. So drugs and medicines, pharma is going to do the better things for Indian economy for long number of years. Then solar energy, wind energy as a renewable energy is this year not much of mention in the budget as a specific, but it is a always growing thing that people have to go for that energy conservation and invest and get the opportunity in the solar energy and wind energy. So our demand or the electricity and the more consumption, I mean the rates and everything is likely to fall in coming 2 years. Then there is a talk of the artificial intelligence, which is primarily now getting up in the IT industry, and many mobile manufacturers are coming in India. A lot of typical apps are banned, and some good apps have been generated locally. So this move is going to give boost for the Indian intellectual people to come forward and do some work in the artificial intelligence kind of area. Then the medical tourism, which is rather not specifically mentioned, but it is rather promoted in some parts of India very aggressively, and which other countries are also doing. So this is an area now. Some small mention is there in the budget, but this is area I will like to see that it is a part of the industry, or tourism is a part of the industry. So it has to get some better weightage also in coming years. Then defense is a very big area of, from our country's point of view, and lot many Indian companies are showing interest and coming up with the big projects, as well as they are investing in the machinery and having the collaboration, and more of we are becoming independent, especially in the defense production, defense strategical materials. And the results are also seen in the recent some conflicts we have seen on the those where basically the combat has been happened with the Indian made defense artillery system. So that is a good move, and budget spending on the defense is also very appropriated, and it is definitely welcome. Defense production, when the budget on the defense increases and defense kind of item or production is given to the Indian industry, so automatically Indian industry becomes more strong and more competitive in the world's point of view. MSME, of course, being the whole projects, all the projects basically are done by the MSMEs, and the small way or other they give their actual practical support to the big industry. And then here I would like to mention that I was rather proud when I received the order for making a clamp for Chandrayaan. I was very delighted. The quantum was very small, but I am a part of this kind of a big project of giving a clamp for holding the rocket of Chandrayaan. I was feeling very delighted. Earlier, I don't know, it may be coming from as an imported material, but since we could develop it and sustain almost so far last 10 years, we have given number of clamps. So it is a great move. That is a confidence has been built with the Indian manufacturers, and as well as the government agencies and this kind of space or technological part, very high technological rather areas where Indian industry is doing the contribution. Well, these are some of the points which I would like to mention right now. Over to Dr. Saab.
Thank you, Mr. Kadilkar sir. It was an excellent presentation on the possible impact of the budget on the industry. But everything, pudding is in the cake, they say. So essentially, it will all depend upon how things take place on the ground.
Yeah.
Now, one of the very important aspects of the Union budget has always been the taxes, the direct taxes and the indirect taxes, and the impact of the budget on the financial market and the capital market, because the finance is at the end of the day the core. It's not only the core of life, it is also the core of the service industry. So to speak on this particular topic of impact of the Union budget on the capital market, the financial market, and the taxation aspect, we have with us a very eminent person, Mr. Manoj Alimchandani. Mr. Manoj Alimchandani is a chartered accountant. He's a medalist in chartered accountant in 1984. And he's a very renowned person. He's a very, very renowned person, a known person, let me put it that way, in the Indian financial and the capital services market. And he has been conducting a large number of seminars, the programs, conventions, and conferences of the CEOs and CXOs. I mean to say, I see him almost every day doing a convention and conference of the CEOs and CXOs of the financial services. He's a very, very renowned person as far as the financial market goes. He has been also on the various committees. He's a very active member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and he's a member of the various committees of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has also started during the pandemic a very, very unique initiative, which is called a think tank, through which he conducts various types of digital programs on each Saturday. So, Mr. Manoj Alimchandani, the floor is open to you for the budget on the financial capital market as well as on the taxation. Mr. Manoj.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
It got stuck up. Now it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now we can hear you.
It is indeed a pleasure and privilege for me to address this prestigious intellectual and professors forum. So many professors are participating actively in the forum, and thousands are watching the live webcast. as the finance minister said, this is a budget which comes once in 100 years. I will take it up from the perspective of all the key stakeholders in all the global economy. All the finance ministers and key stakeholders who are looking at a deep dive perspective of the Union Budget 2021 presented by the Finance Minister, the proposals for finance, fiscal consolidation, direct taxes, indirect taxes, and also which carries a lots of announcements for the economy and the way ahead. As we have seen, due to the pandemic and unexpected issues, the fiscal consolidation path is being deferred to FY26. The deficit target for the budget is 6.8% of GDP in FY22, and for FY21, which has been affected by the pandemic, it has come to 9.5% of GDP. Now, looking at the perspective from the stakeholders in the global economy, for India, it is very clearly, and for the whole world, first 2 quarters were for survival, right? Next 2 quarters were for revival. And many of the economies in the world which were earlier developed, they are still looking at survival and revival. The way ahead, the next 2 quarters, the next year, and the way ahead is for how to thrive. The time has come. All the economies of the world are looking at India thriving and achieving the highest growth rate in GDP in the world. This will help the developed economy to revive and thrive. So this is the idea whose time has come. Nobody can stop it. And all the developed countries and developed economies and developing countries are looking at India to partner with them, to help them in the global supply chain, and also in whatever way possible, so that they also are enabled to grow, survive, revive, and thrive. Now, one has to look at what India can do and the finance minister can do to achieve these goals. Capital market is a mainstay for revival and global economy should thrive. India has some of the best regulations in the world. Securities Market Code is being launched. This is one of the best regulations which is coming, which will bring in together the SEBI Act. SEBI is among the best regulators in the world. Securities and Exchange Board of India, depository. Everybody is aware of Demat account for equities, bonds, listed bonds, even insurance policies and all are coming into Demat mode, mutual funds and all the financial instruments are coming. Government Securities Act is also a part of it. Now, who is most important in the global stakes? The global investors. A new investor charter is coming for investor protection. Investor protection is a key which everybody is interested. A new investor charter is coming. Main theme of the budget for all the people who are looking at the economies, various sectors is privatization, which has been a major challenge. We knew liberalization came in 1990s, where because of global challenges, India was forced to do it. This investment target is 1.75 lakh crores. A long haul, a big target. Last few years, this was a very challenging target and we could not achieve it. Now, the global stakeholders feel this target is achievable, and not only achieve it, one can exceed it, because there's a lot of interest, not only from the FIIs, FPIs, mutual funds but all the citizens of India and the world, they want a part in India growth story. How does the economy revive and can thrive? It can only thrive when the investment cycle picks up. So capex is very important. As we shared all the sectors, the capacity utilization has been very low in the lockdown and even in earlier years because of competitive strategy by various other rival countries. Now, India is ready for full-fledged competition. In fact, India can lead the world in competitive strategies. So capex targets in the budget is quite significant. There is a huge step up in capex in spite of the challenges on the fiscal front. Ultimately, this will grow the tax base and ultimately we'll achieve fiscal consolidation. We can address issues on any sectors, any corporate. Now looking at the different sectors, banking, there is a PSU bank recap of 20,000 crores. It's very, very important. They need to improve the capital adequacy. And one major demand of all the developed economies for last so many years was they wanted to participate in the insurance story. The FDI for insurance has been hiked to 74% from 49%. Everybody was wondering how India could do it in spite of challenges, but India has done it. It is the biggest welcome move for increase in FDI to 74%. This is going to bring lots of global investments and this will help in the investment cycle. Insurance Act 1938 will be amended. There is an asset reconstruction and management company to be set up as a specialized things. Everybody is aware of NPAs in the financial sector, banks and NBFCs. Agri is most important. There is a huge base of farmers and India has been a agri supplier not only to all the citizens, but also in exports and helping the global economy. So agri credit target, credit is very important to kickstart a much higher growth, 16.5 lakh crores. Micro irrigation is very important because of dependence on monsoons earlier. India has made rapid strides in irrigation. The corpus has been doubled to 10,000 crores. Doubling is very significant. We are not talking about 5 and 10 and 15%. The agri infra fund increases to 40,000 crores. Development of infrastructure is very important. And what about the entrepreneur? Entrepreneurs has a big opportunity for startup. One person company can be set up, no restrictions on paid up capital and no restriction on turnover. This is ease of doing business for the India growth story. SMEs, the definition for SMEs has been changed in the Companies Act on capital and turnover both. AIFs, which drive investments in a big way, they are allowed to participate in a much bigger way for sale of distressed assets. Healthcare is very important in not only in times of COVID, but ultimately for the health of global citizens. Atmanirbhar Health Yojana, huge outlay of over 64,000 crores. National Health Mission, vaccines, India will be a supplier of vaccines to the whole world, taking care of the healthcare of all the citizens in a very, very significant way. So looking at various issues, finance is not complete without taxation. Government needs tax for its huge expenditure. So taxes are direct taxes and indirect taxes. Both are very, very important. Some of the main key issues on a deep dive basis, which could be highlighted for all the participants watching the broadcast, are a major change for FIIs and FDIs. In terms of dividends, earlier the TDS was over 20%. Now there is a level playing field on an international perspective. They'll get benefit of double tax agreements, DTAAs. There is a huge potential for investment in infrastructure and real estate. So there is a special amendment for advantage for REITs, real estate investment trusts and InvITs, infrastructure investment trust. For infrastructure, there is a big benefit by way of zero coupon infrastructure for the debt funds for the bonds. For cooperative banks also, there is a major change. There is a tax neutral conversion of cooperative banks into banking companies. For housing, which is a mainstay, there are incentives of affordable housings being extended. From the corporate taxation, one major change which is coming is on international taxation, equalization levies, and for all the corporates and partnerships, LLPs, there is an increase in tax audit threshold limit under Section 44AB. This is for ease of doing business. There are some people, they will say they have lost opportunities for audits, but really it's a wonderful step for ease on doing business. It will be a big boost for entrepreneurship all over the country. Entrepreneurs will thrive because of this amendment. We have talked about faceless assessments. Faceless assessments, some people say it reduces bureaucratic hurdles or harassments, but actually it adds to easier compliance and also ease of doing business. Faceless, the concept has been extended to tribunals also. So this is a wonderful thing. There is a rationalization of processing of ITRs, issuing notices, and on the there are many other things. Particularly, I was told there are lots of senior citizens participating at the broadcast. For senior citizens, there is a special advantage for senior citizens 75 years. There is no ITR if the income is from pension and bank interest. Huge number of citizens are getting a pension. So it's a very, very welcome step, particularly for all the people we talked about defense. It's a big applause for everybody. And one major change for all the global investors and Indian investors are the pre-filled ITRs for capital gains and dividend. Now pre-filled, we actually wonder how the pre-filled forms will take. How can you compute capital gains? Now some people say all your sale of securities will be captured because the sale data possibly government is capturing it in a secret way, or whichever way is there, sales of securities, whether it is equities, bonds, or any instrument for short term and long term. But how the cost of long term will be actually computed is really wonderful, because many investors don't have the previous data for so many years. And of course, the grandfathering clause was there, but the actual cost is very important from the way the Income Tax Act has been drafted. And there are lots of demergers and splits and bonuses. So that cost is a very, very tedious process. I hope, and many global citizens have communicated, possibly long-term capital gain should be exempted for retail investors to whatever limit. So then people can really focus on investment and growth ahead. There are lots of facilities for offshore funds. We know about international offshore centers and GIFT City. So there were challenges for GIFT City. People were investing through other tax havens, Singapore, Mauritius, Cyprus, and there are many countries, whether it is London or New York. So GIFT City, there are major changes. Hopefully this year onwards, GIFT City will thrive, and a lot of NRIs and foreign investors, FPIs, will benefit in a very, very significant way ahead. Looking to other issues on indirect taxes are most important. GST collections have picked up in the last 3 months. Hopefully they will pick up, and rise in collections are not just because of stimulus. Hopefully the revival in GDP growth will keep on continuing over the next few quarters, and of course the years ahead. On a GST front, there is a major step on ease of doing business, liberalization of limits for the GST audits. There were lots of procedural issues, lots of IT issues in terms of filing returns and regular deadlines for the SME sector. Of course, the large organizations have the advantage of a large professional, highly qualified teams, and their advisors. So this is a major step. SME will be benefited in a very, very significant way. But there is one proposal which many people would not like is of attachment of properties of the entrepreneurs and companies, attachment of properties if there are some issues in filing of returns. Of course, there is a view that it can improve compliance, but there is a other view also whether attachment should take place or there should be a very clear opportunity to all the taxpayers or given sufficient extension and good opportunity. So this should not take place and enable all of them to file the returns and pay taxes in a very amicable and easy manner. And there are lots of other changes. I invite questions in the open forum on any issue, on any country, on any economic issue, financial issue, tax issue, any sector, any company, any stock. We are welcome to discuss. Ultimately, it is all about India growth story, and there should be a very open discussion today and on a continuing, ongoing basis. So India growth story is here to stay, and all the objectives of the finance minister and the members of the parliament and all the assemblies together who benefit from the fiscal consolidation really takes off. We achieved all the objectives and the idea of India growth story, which is being implemented by way of ease of doing business, recognized by the United Nations, recognized by the IMF. Global ranking in ease of business is going up. It should continue to go up. All of us should work together. All the think tanks get together to achieve this objective. Wonderful forum. Glad to be a part of it and take any views and any questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mittatani. That was an excellent presentation, very, very comprehensive presentation on the impact of the budget on the financial sector, on the capital market, and most importantly, the direct and indirect taxes. That was an exceedingly good presentation. So I think we had three fascinating presentations: the economic aspects, the impact of the budget on the corporate, and the impact of the budget on the finance of the capital market, as well as on the taxation aspect. Now this is now a free flow forum. I request some of my colleagues from the higher education forum, if they would like to make some presentation or something like that, if they want to say a few words, add before we open for, or they want to ask any questions, whatever it is, floor is open to them.
Sir, I wanted to ask a question to Mr. Kannan.
Please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question essentially is, you mentioned that the declaration of UPA of the NPAs in 2017 was the root cause for the banks, unlike what happened to the global banking system, right? But then don't you, sir, do you agree that the NPAs were originally caused by the previous governments, and some point or the other, the NPAs have to come up. And if you just keep on hiding it, you're only inflating the profits of the bank, and ultimately they will all go down. So therefore, it's a very wonderful move, in my opinion, and not a negative move, the way you pointed it out.
No, I will just say, I'm not against banks providing, but they gave a very short time to declare all the NPAs. So they did not have much time to think. And since they are forced to declare by 2017 March, from 4.5 it went up to 14.5. So as a result, what has happened? One is that banks' capital adequacy ratio for many of the banks got reduced. So the ability to lend more got restricted. That's one. Second is because all these problems came, and banking system on issue is there. Especially today, when people want to take out this CMD or MD position, they are very, very careful. They fear that, you name any inspection agency in India, the bank top management is subjected to it. So there is a vigilance also. So people really worried that even if something goes mistake, banking as an industry is known for taking risk. Not everything they lend will come back. So if they have a NPA of 2 to 3%, that is a normal NPA. But if it goes beyond 5, then it is not normal. So it can be strengthened. But if it is 14, 15%, and also we saw some 2-3 bankers were sent to jail and all that. And everybody at the top and in the senior management, they stopped taking decisions on giving credit. So they thought something happens to that, and that the top management, they're going to be there for only 2-3 years. So the 2-3 years, whatever they've learned, if something happens, then they're going to suffer later. So that we saw that happening to at least 4 senior people in the system. So that has really made the lenders very, very conservative, and they in fact stopped lending to most of the sectors. In fact, real estate and all, total stoppage of credit. And as you are all aware, NBFCs, main source of funding for NBFC is banks. They mainly borrow money from banks, then they lend it. Similarly, you look at microfinance companies, main funding source for microfinance companies is banks. So that, you are aware, even last year, actually, the credit growth was not very high. Even after Madam announcing this SME, the 3 lakh crore package, what we saw when you looked at the figure in the month of November, actually compared to previous year, lending to SMEs were lower. Even after bringing the package of 3 lakh crores, out of which 1,80,000 crores was actually given to SMEs. Then they found that no more takers of 1,20,000 crore. And what government did, they opened that window of 1,20,000 crore to other sectors. So that was my point. So instead of 2017 March, they could have said by 2018 or 2019, then banks would have given provisions every year, and by then the growth would have continued. We should always remember, whenever there is high economic growth, there will be a high growth in banking. When there is high growth in banking, the NPA as an absolute number, as a percentage, will be much less. So it will not be 14. It might have been 10. It might have been 8, like that. That was my point.
Okay, great, great.
Sir,
Dr. Chandana? Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. I have a couple of observations.
Please,
Yeah.
please.
I think this budget is more of a supply side. It addresses the issue of the supply side economics. Because if you see the various kind of measures and the steps that the government has taken and the budget proposes, such as the agriculture reforms, the labor reforms, increase in the FDI in investment in the area of insurance, and then disinvestment of banks and LIC, and large-scale monetization of government assets. All the are the proposals which address the supply side economics, and I find a mismatch between the demand side economics in the sense that not many measures have been taken in order to address the demand side of the budget. In the sense, there is a basic assumption that whatever the expenditure is made by the government, particularly the investment expenditure, it will create employment opportunities, and thereby it will create the income, and then by way of the marginal propensity to consume, the consumption will increase. This is the basic assumption. Okay. However, there again, I find that some of the labor intensive industries, such as the hotel and restaurant, the construction, the food processing, the textile, leather, gems and jewelry, etc. These are the ones which are labor intensive industries. Whether sufficient allocations have been made to these industries, I doubt. I have my own concern. Therefore, the employment scenario also, which we are assuming that it will, the budget will address, but that the investment in, by way of increasing the capex itself is not going to address this issue. At the same time, when we have 1.15 million people are unemployed here who have been rendered unemployed because of the lockdown at this point of time. Second issue is that even the economy is working only at 70%, to be on the higher side, capacity utilization at this point of time. So there is a lot of unutilized capacity already exists in the economy. Therefore, to really assume that the new capacity creation will take place is also perhaps it doesn't convince me. Secondly, the second point is about the inflation. It says that the nominal growth rate in the year 2021-22 will be of the order of 14%, 14.5%, and the real growth will be 11%. It means the inflation will be only 3.5%. I doubt 3.5% in the given scenario here, the 3.5% will exceed the inflation. When will exceed the inflation target, obviously it has a negative impact. Now, the question is how to really increase the consumption. The aggregate demand consists of aggregate consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports. And now let us say investment, we have addressed the issue. The consumption part is there. So consumption is either you really, the existing consumption, you increase the existing consumption and with the people who are already consuming, who are the employment market, and or you create new employment opportunities and thereby create the new consumption opportunities. And so new creation, the employment opportunities, I think are the kind of provisions that have been made do not sufficiently address to that creating the new demand for the consumption. Therefore, your consumption is also not going to increase significantly. In that case, whether we will achieve the 11% or 14.5% nominal rate of growth, I have some issues.
Thank you, Dr. Adhikari. I think Mr. Jain, if you can, please let me put forward the questions very briefly. He's talking about that there is not much thrust in this particular budget on the enhancement of the demand. It is more taken care of the supply side rather than the demand side. So what is the guarantee that the demand will be pushed? And if the demand is not pushed up, nothing is going to happen in the Indian economy for the revival, number one. Number two, he's talking about even if the supply side is taken care of, but still many of the companies are only running 65 to 70% of the capacity. If there is no demand, why should the supply side, even if you give some funding, even if you give support, why should the supply side increase from 20% capacity to 100% capacity or 110% capacity? And that's the second question. The third question, the budget doesn't talk about the employment generation. Because if the supply side doesn't increase and if the demand side doesn't increase, if the consumption doesn't increase, the creation of the fresh jobs, probably is a difficult part. And fourth and the last question, which is a very important thing, which is talking about that if you're looking at a real growth and the nominal growth at the rate of 14.5% and at 11%, assumption is that inflation is only going to be 3.5%, which appears to be difficult under the present scenario, an assumption that the inflation is only going to be 3.5%. Kannan, would you like to start? And then we'll go to Mr. Jain.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So if you talk about consumption, it has got three components. I will look at it from three perspectives. One is the consumption by government itself. Second is consumption by government employees. Then consumption by us. So I will break that into three parts. So if you talk about consumption, actually, the way the budget has been prepared, we will see that consumption by government will go up. Second is already, I was speaking after the pandemic, I must have spoken about 45, 50 webinars on what government should do. I'm happy that this monetizing the land and all has come. And also government tried to kind of give incentive to government employees for using their LTA for spending. LTA and all that. But now government has to come up with a big scheme whereby government itself is a major consumer of any product in the economy. Whether it is a hardware, whether it is software, whether it is vehicles, you name it. Government is the major consumer of the products. So one is that they have increased the capital expenditure. One is that they should not reduce consumption, or they should look at least a 5 to 10% increase in the activity. Second is, if you look at more than 4 crore people, either they are central government, state government, or local government employees and pensioners. Yeah, pension alone accounts for 2 lakh crores. So they have to bring in a scheme whereby the people, mainly this government and government-related people, they are asked to spend. That's second part. Third is that there is a big emphasis on developing the blue economy. When you are targeting a $5 trillion economy for India, $1 trillion of GDP can come from blue economy. That is relating to shipbuilding, ship breaking, and port-based development of ports. So there is a lot of emphasis. And as far as industry, Mr. Jayant Kadilkar talked about various incentives. So one of the things, as of today, I think we are 5 or 6 in textiles. So earlier we are number 3, and Bangladesh and Vietnam overtook us. So with the view to encourage textiles, because textile is one industry which employs a lot of people. So government has identified setting up textile parks. Then this Atmanirbhar Bharat, you are asking about this employment generation. If you go to some of these companies which are manufacturing telecom equipments or telecom products, you find they employ 5,000 people, 10,000 people, 15,000 people. Under this Atmanirbhar Bharat, what is going to happen? We already saw Hindustan Aeronautics Limited getting a big order of 48,000 crores, which will be completed in 2.5 years' time. So like that, we are going to see a lot of these companies from US, China, Europe, they are going to come. And already a company like Realme, which is manufacturing TVs, they had given outsourcing job to 3 companies in India to manufacture those TVs in India. So like that, we are going to see in many of these sectors, we will see, we had a 2014, what was called Make in India. We wanted to take 16% of GDP to 25. But as of this year, it was only 16.7. So that Make in India really did not make any impact. But this Atmanirbhar Bharat and the scheme for 13 industries, I am sure it is going to see lot of foreign direct investment coming into India. There is one. Second is that even existing units, they will start expanding. They'll start manufacturing. They'll become a contract production unit for foreign companies. So they will give employment. That is going to happen. That is my view. Thank you.
Mr. Jayant Kadilkar, would you like to take it up?
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Sabsi, I'll just make some remark with respect to what Mr. Kannan has just now added. See, 2-3 points were really missed from my earlier presentation. So it is like a production linked incentive, especially this time government has offered in the budget for the electronic manufacturing activity. So which is rather now employing a large number of people. And so those incentives with respect to production will boost the economy, which is now very prone to this digitalization in coming years. So this is a good incentive. Then the point which I missed was correctly pointed out, that's textile parks. 5 textile parks are rather planned in this year, and the government has taken a very serious note that Bangladesh and Vietnam, as you rightly mentioned the name, even the some other Philippines also, they are they are rather pushing their products, rather textiles in the international market. If you buy any T-shirt and you see the label in outside, so you will find that there are these three names and plus Indian name is also there. So if we make this proper implementation of the scheme and use these resources and government incentives for the textile parks, the 5 parks government has planned, and it will boost the economy. Actually, primarily the demand increase. How to increase the demand? So that's a big economical question. Everywhere we have to face it. Who can spend in the biggest project? I think in India, only answer is government. Government people always feel that government has got money and they can always think of the project. In reality, how many big industrialists are putting up big money in projects like dams or any other say for the defense projects. So these where the big investment is required, still that the domain is with government. So if government has now opened up their purse, and now they are spending on the infrastructure and then roadways, so the construction industry is likely to get boom. So automatically the cement and the steel industry is likely to get boom. Then this automobile industries where the scrapping policy has been. So these are the measures. They will definitely create a demand, but not immediately. I think by passing up to say up to October, there is a positive. You can see that demand is going to get increased, and automatically by the way of road and other construction, the employment also is going to go on the higher scale. See, these three areas, and the one big area which was rather neglected for years together. India has got about 1,400 kilometers of the coastal line, and the fishery or fishing business was neglected as an industry and money generation or money spinning area. So from the export point of view as well, it was not given the proper importance. Now the Deep Ocean Mission, which is having the concern the government has noted, and there are 5 major fishing hubs government is going to put it up. So it is a very welcome move. So the new area we are and competitive area we are entering in. So this kind of demand, of course, the demand generation is planned. Now, the execution and implementation will speak by itself, and by like this after this years, somewhere in the middle of the year, probably the things will start moving from the demand perspective. Will better. That is my
just I want to add one point.
Yeah.
Wherever there is a labor-intensive industries are there, government has increased the, I think, duties for import, especially the gems and jewelry you mentioned.
Yeah,
Some of the industries where employment-intensive industries, the government has increased the duty so that more production happens in India. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a point to make, Kannan, and
Just Dr. Gopal, 1 minute. Mr. Manoj, would you like to add something?
Yeah, surely. Very wonderful, very important point on employment issues. Here one should understand who is the largest employer, which are the sectors. It is infrastructure sector, it is real estate sector. And then we have manufacturing, then we have SME. Now, what is there for infrastructure sector is the capex target. One is that, but more important is it is not only giving orders. Lots of infrastructure companies have been crying that they are not getting the disbursements in time. They need cash flow. They can fulfill the orders. They can get some credit from some of the their own suppliers, but they need to pay, and they need to pay their employees in time. So disbursements to infrastructure companies which have been delayed should be speeded up, and I hope if they should be paid up in maximum 30 days from today, so there are no outstanding dues. Unless the infrastructure company set up, and there are infrastructure companies are not only large, there are lots of contractors, there are lots of service provider to infrastructure companies, they are affected. Another is the real estate, which is a part of infrastructure story. So it can generate huge employment. And we all know last 10 years was an adverse cycle in real estate. Now people are talking about green shoots. but are the green shoots because of stamp duty discounts and rebates which have been given in the last few months, or will the stamp duties will be reduced so that we are globally competitive? 5%, 6% stamp duties are very, very high. I see Mr. Jayant nodding. Particularly, stamp duties are high, cost of doing business goes up, and whether all the SMEs are getting disbursements in time. This is very, very key issue. Then only employment can pick up. One area when employment can pick up is startups. If startups, they have been facing lots of obstacles, although a couple of years back, a 10,000 crore fund for startup was announced. But budget often usually has announcements which are short on deliveries if one sees the action taken. So startups amendments are there. Startups, if the obstacles are, if they get finance, a few banks are ready to give funds to any startup. Just see, there are so many people here. You try to do a startup. All of you have ideas, but you go to the bank. You see whether you will get money. The answer is clearly 90% of them will say no. Money is always available for the person who doesn't need the money, but who needs the money. It is a real challenge. So here employment can be a big booster if the startups and entrepreneurs for which policy announcements are there, they get money and they get guarantee. For SMEs, the guarantees really work. There are very good SMEs. It is not that they don't want to pay, but then they need relief at certain points of time. They have genuine reasons. They are paying taxes. They are filing returns, and they are facing lots of challenges and issues. Ultimately, it is the entrepreneurs and the SMEs and this core sectors which can revive growth and take it to the next level and generate huge employment. And India should not look only at Atmanirbhar Bharat or just Make in India. I was a part of Make in India, Startup India, digital initiatives a couple of years ago. India is a global supplier to the supply chains of all the corporates and marts and economies of the whole world that can generate not only just employment, and we'll be having the best talent of India at all levels, entrepreneurial level, corporate level, and educational level for the thrival of global growth.
Thank you. Thank you. One question immediately for Mr. Manoj Limchandani. There is a question from the senior citizen group that the budget, apart from giving that benefit of not filing, ITR and that too with a pension, that's a very, very minor thing. But there is no, otherwise there is no benefit as far as senior citizens are concerned. They constitute about 8% of the total population. That's a huge number. But there is no benefit given in this particular budget. Is it right?
You are right, sir. They are also right. They need much bigger benefits. It is not easy for them to file returns. And why 75 years? Why not 50 years? Or 60 years? Or 55 years? There are different definitions of senior citizens by various people. I would like all of you to say and debate what should be the age of a senior citizen and what is the age of a youngster. So there are more incentives which are required, and all of you together should make a representation for more tax benefits to senior citizens, and also they are not in business, right? For ease for senior citizens in compliance, so they are not worried of getting emails. How many of them will see emails of getting a notice for a faceless assessment based on a return? Do you see emails? How many of 8%, you said senior citizens, would see emails in case they get a notice for a faceless assessment? We need to be very, very practical. There are very practical on the ground issues for senior citizens, SMEs, entrepreneurs, corporates, small corporates, mid corporates, large corporates, even for global companies. They need to be addressed. I'm really very glad you have taken up core important issues for senior citizens and SMEs, for employment, and for that India can thrive as a global economy and be on a very competitive basis and be a major partner to the global economy and
Thank
be
you,
the
thank
fastest growing economy in years to come, much ahead than 2050 or 2040 some people are aspiring for.
Thank you, sir. For we are now opening the floor for the student friends because they are the most important people. They are the future of the country. Any specific question from the students?
Sure.
We'll take 1 or 2 questions.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Just Gopal, just 1 minute. Let students ask, then you can ask the last question. Just a moment. Students, would you like to ask any question?
Dr. Gopal is a student itself.
We are all students.
Yeah, students, any student, kindly unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello.
Yeah,
Sir,
we can
please
hear.
wait. Please wait. Lakshpati sir, please wait. Okay. We are asking for students, please. Students, any question? We'll give you another 30 seconds to think over, please.
I would love to address the students.
I think they are tired and they must be hungry. Okay, Lakshpati sir, आपका question बोलिए before we go to the last question, Dr. Gopal.
Yes, yes. This is Prakash Lakhapote speaking as a senior citizen. For any country, for growth of a country, what we need to control is the scam or corruption. So, what is the provision made in the budget for this purpose? I would like to know from any of the panel members.
So they have done a lot of digitization operations. Now you'll find that like Mr. Alim Chandani said, there is a form called 26. So already last year, if you saw the form, in all your names, the form 26 will be there. Now they're going to capture whatever transaction you do. Even if you sell land, sell a house, and if you're given your PAN number or Aadhaar number, they're going to link Aadhaar number, PAN number, everything. Now at one go, you will get a statement from the income tax department of whatever transactions you have done. You need not even tell them, they will capture it. So that is a provision. So now they want to, as we have seen in the last 2-3 months, they already caught a lot of these GST offenders, GST. A lot of people are misusing it. Similarly, income tax also, if you find almost 10% of filings, they are not showing the real true picture. So now what is going to happen? All that is going to be captured. So if you want to see your form, you can go to the website to put your PAN number. All the transactions you have done will be seen. Similarly, faceless assessment to reduce the corruption. Faceless assessment, where if you appeal and all, you need not go and meet people. You can do it through internet. So they are trying to actually reduce corruption in every department, whatever. And of course, it will take time. It is not the DC. Corruption is totally institutionalized. It will take time, but these are baby steps. So they have taken the steps.
Sir, Dr. Sengupta, I have a question. Ramni Iyer here.
Please go ahead, sir.
I am Ramni Iyer.
Please go ahead, sir.
Again on the topic of senior citizens, I am a little concerned that the pension expenditure has been reduced from 2 lakh crores to 1.4 lakh crores or so. That means about 30% it is reduced. Assuming a part of it is holding up the duress allowance, which is about 17%, the other 13% really causes concern. Does it mean that the pension will be reduced further? Because Mr. Kannan said he had no clue as to how this will be done. Other panelists, because it's really scary for a pensioner to know that his pension will be reduced. Somehow the newspapers did not highlight this.
No, there will not be a big reduction. This year, pension was 2.04 lakh crores, and next year it will be 1.89 lakh crores. Only 15,000 crore will be reduced. What will happen is that they might cap the maximum pension. Now there is no cap. So they might cap the pension for pensioners and that is where the savings might come. And like you said,
I would like to add,
no, sir.
add something on pensions. No pension amount will be reduced for anybody. It is very, very clearly a strong lobby. No pension amount will be reduced for anybody. Nobody should worry on that.
But there is one more statement on pension which the government has said. 800 or some number constitutes to almost a very huge amount of deposits that they do on the pension fund. And the government has said that they will reduce the interest that is payable to that section of the high income group, which deposits a big sum of money into the pension fund. But the lower income, that is people like you and me, who deposit what maximum 1 lakh or 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs, their interest is not going to get affected. That is the statement made by Nirmala Sitharaman.
Maybe that savings is coming from that part, possible. Yeah,
Yes.
like Ms. Salim Chandani said, they are not going to reduce to everybody, but maybe that part might be saved.
Reducing only at the higher income groups, about 800 to 1,000 account for almost 60 to 70% of the pension fund. So there, the interest above a certain amount, they are going to reduce.
Yeah. Well, there are many people who are taking a pension of more than 1 lakh rupees per month.
Yeah.
So there are people getting 1,25,000 also. So, and you can't give 75 age benefit, and you can't give pension also high. All that I think they will do something. I don't know.
The cost of living is going up. All the pensioners deserve a decent living, and those who are living in metro cities and all, and don't have their own houses, so they have a right and reason to demand a reasonable pension. But talking about interest rates globally, not only about pension, interest rates are coming down because of the global policy of zero interest rates, negative interest rates. Ultimately, it has to reflect in the whole world. Of course, if the sovereign rating for India goes up a few notches, it will add significantly to the investment cycle and the India growth story. But the senior citizens, all of them, pensioners and otherwise, they depend on bank deposits for their livelihood. So their interest should be considered always by the finance ministers of all the world, not only India. We need a social security system to be built in. US has a very good social security system. UK has a good social security systems to take care of any emergencies, medical emergencies, or whatever things, unemployment issues are there. We all know the stimulus. Everybody was getting over $1,000 check, even if he was a flourishing person and a super rich person, and they were investing and they became Robin Hoods and they started buying shares. That's how the story picked up. So this is very vital. The social security system needs to be built up, which is lacking in the budget, and hopefully it should come in the future budget. There are reasons for the finance minister for what proposals they have done. But I see this in a much larger perspective, issues of pensioners, interest, and it should be all linked up. Everybody should demand, not as a lobby, micro lobby. People say, we have to take care of millions of stakeholders, so many segments. All of you should get together and demand in this webinar today that there should be a very good social security system for everybody who needs it. Not only senior citizens over 75 or 60 or whatever age, it should be available for everybody on a comprehensive manner. That is my humble request to all the stakeholders and intellectuals and professors participating in this prestigious forum.
1 minute on the social security. Government runs a scheme called NREGA, Rural Employment Scheme. Last year, they spent 60,000 crores. This year, budget was 70 or 75. Actually, they are spending 1,15,000 crores on NREGA this year. But next year, they reduced it to 73,000 crores. So that benefits 5.5 crore families. For every family, they give employment to one person, 100 days in a year, minimum of 212 rupees. So which means it covers 25 crore people. And apart from that, this rationing system, ration system covers 80 crore people in India. So that way, if you see, there now, of course, they got all these at free wheat and rice and all free. But next year onwards, they'll get it at 2 rupees and 5 rupees. So that system is there, but how it can be expanded, they have to see. But already a lot of expenditure is going into that.
Here, I will also like to make a one point that every budget or every other forum, how many taxpayers in India are increasing either by number or by percentage, and the number of, always it is said that number of taxpayers, they are increasing and they are contributing to national growth for the government to have the fund for some kind of progress. So those figures are not getting published either in quarterly or annually. How many taxpayers are getting? Because when this kind of topic being discussed with one of my friend in Korea, he said that 82% people in Korea are taxpayers. So we understand that why India doesn't have the figures to be published, and some target has been placed, because right now this number of taxpayers and automatically a few percentage of pensioners is a big issue. Since we are in the small in number, pensioners as well as taxpayers, so the government is not paying good attention. That could be one of the reasons.
The budget, they actually mentioned the taxpayers. 2014, I think they had 1.5 crore people filing tax, not paying tax. 1.5 crore people filing tax. Now, last year it has gone up to 6.5 crores people filing tax. Maybe the people, they also publish the numbers, how many pay tax, who's in which category of the tax, more than 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs. That statistics is being published every year. I think maybe out of 6.5 crore, maybe 2.5 crore people would have paid tax. And most of them are government employees, corporate employees, IT employees. These are the people who are paying tax.
On this very important issues,
because they're all farmers. 60% of the people don't pay tax because they're all farmers.
Correct.
On this very important issue of things,
you cannot get 82% at all.
On this very important issue, Mr. Gopal, you have raised on paying tax. I would like to add, it is very important we look at the real GDP growth, not only nominal GDP growth. If we can achieve a real GDP growth of over 8% for next 10 years, the tax paying population will not only go up by just 5-10%, it will multiply very, very clearly. Since if the income the GDP on a real basis, on a sustained ongoing basis goes up, which we can certainly do, everybody will benefit in terms of rise in incomes, whether it is a corporate, whether it is a small taxpayer, or whether it is a farmer. Everybody will benefit very, very clearly. And I invite, in fact, all the intellectuals, senior citizens, and students, please watch all these core issues being discussed on the Think Tank Conclave, which is on YouTube and lots of social media. Each issue is very vital and it needs to be taken up on an ongoing, sustained, continuous basis. Each issue is very important, particularly from the students' perspective, who are all dear to us. Each student should be a valuable participant in the India growth story and should be ready to articulate their expectations. Ultimately, they are the future generation. They are going to drive the global economies and corporates or startups, right?
Yeah, on this taxation, one point I have, GST, when they introduced the GST, the government's target of collection per month was 1,40,000 crores. So that is the assumption they made. So already I think 1.2 or 1.3 crore establishments are registered for GST, but only 70 or 75 lakh companies are paying GST. So which means the small and medium enterprises which are not covered earlier, they were covered now. So they have a GST number and all that. So 1.3 crore or something, but not all of them are paying GST. So like that, if the compliance improves itself, India has got one of the lowest tax to GDP ratios. And this is the only way, like Professor Gopal said, agriculture also, I think more than 1 crore it's taxable, I'm not sure. Maybe Mr. Alim Chandani can tell us. Agriculture also, a lot of people we know, many farmers are very, very rich and they don't pay income. And one more thing, many of the famous personalities in Mumbai and India, they call themselves as agriculturalists and they don't pay tax.
Well, since you
So I
raised
think
very,
I
very
think I
important
think with
issue.
the with the word of Mr. Alim Chandani that Indian growth story shall continue, and every budget gives some amount of push, some amount of impetus to the India growth story. To what extent that is implemented, to what extent that is successful, that only the future can say. But anyway, this was a budget which was consensus was bearing a few concerns here and there, like employment, like giving impetus to the demand, etc., etc. But by and large, the consensus has been that this budget was a little bit of growth-oriented budget, and implemented properly, this budget might give a push to the, if implemented properly, that's a very important thing, might give a push to the growth India, grow India, Atmanirbhar India, whatever the India you talk about, the future India of the country. Thank you very much for being with us today. I take this opportunity on behalf of Higher Education Forum to thank Mr. Kannan, Mr. Alim Chandani, Manoj Alim Chandani, and Mr. Jayant Khadilkar for the wonderful lead presentations, and also the active participation by Dr. Gopal, Dr. Chandan Adhikari, and all others who have contributed significantly for making success of this particular program. Thank you very much. Look forward to meeting all of you on some other occasion. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for attending this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to call you now
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
because